Hi, I'm Nikki from Find Me Crafting. One of my absolute favorite things about where I live is that we have sunshine year round. It's fantastic, but it does necessitate the use of sunglasses, especially if you're going to be driving around. Now, I have the sunglasses. What I don't have is a great place to keep them so that I don't have to search for them every time I get into the car. So I came up with this solution. This is a sunglasses or regular glasses holder. It's a little bit padded, keeps your sunglasses protected, and it's got elastic on the back. So it fits onto the sun visor in your car. And my favorite part is that it fits onto the sun visor vertically. So it's not going to cover up that mirror that, if you're like me, you may be using to apply your face while you're parked in the drop-off line at school. So it keeps everything up and out of the way, and because you have this nifty little snap on the strap, it's going to keep your sunglasses from falling out even if you're moving your sun visor around. And if you don't want to keep yours on the visor, just leave off this elastic piece on the back. And then you have a really great sunglasses or regular glasses holder to throw into a bag or a purse or on the center console in your car. Easy peasy. These are a really quick and easy scrap buster. You can make a bunch really fast with very little fabric, so you can make one for yourself and a bunch to give away. Come on, I'll show you how. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any new patterns or projects. Here's what you're going to need for supplies. I have this free template available on my website. The link is in the description box down below. You can print it out, and this is a template for the strap that goes on the sunglass holder. There's a little box up in the corner. This just shows you that when you print it out, this should be 1 inch by 1 inch, and all you have to do is cut this out. You're going to need some fabric. You need 2 pieces of fabric. One is for your exterior, one is for the interior. They are different sizes. I am using 100% cotton, and the exterior should be cut at 6 3/4 inches wide and 7.5 inches tall. The interior fabric should be cut to 6 3/4 inch wide and 7 1/4 inches tall. If you're using a piece of fabric for the exterior that is directional, so there is a very specific top and bottom to it, you want your shorter edges, the 6 3/4 inch wide edges, to be at the top and the bottom for your glasses holder. You're also going to need some fusible fleece. That means that there is adhesive on the back that you can iron onto your fabric. This piece is going to be cut at 6 1/4 inches wide by 6 3/4 inches tall. You're also going to need a piece of fabric to cut out your strap in. I'm using my interior fabric for that, just for some contrast. So what I'm going to do is fold my right sides together, my little piece of fabric. I'm going to put this on top, and I'm just going to cut around it so that I have 2 pieces of cotton cut the exact same. You're going to need some elastic trim, very stretchy. This is a 1/2 inch wide, and we're going to be cutting our piece to 8 3/4 inches long. Because we're going to be using a snap on the strap of the glasses holder, you will also need all of the pieces for a size 20 plastic snap. That's 2 different caps, the female portion and the male portion. And then you need a way to install them. So you can use a handheld snap press or a table press, which is what I'm going to be using. If you're using the table press, you will also need the dies that go with the size 20 plastic snaps. And either way, you will need an awl, which is used for punching the hole in the fabric. If you have any trouble at all with snaps, I'm going to have a link in the description box for a step-by-step tutorial for installing plastic snaps. In order to cut your fabric, you're going to need a cutting mat like this, and a cutting ruler, and a rotary blade, or some fabric scissors. You're going to need a fabric marking pencil or marker, some sewing clips, an iron and an ironing board. You'll also need a sewing machine and some matching or coordinating all-purpose thread. I'm going to start by creating my strap. So I used my template. I've cut out both pieces of my strap fabric, and they are facing each other. The right sides are facing one another. I'm going to take this to my sewing machine, and I am going to go, I'm going to line it up so it's actually lined up. Okay. I'm going to start at this corner. I'm going to go around and stop here. So I want to leave this open flat end unsewn. I'm going to sew this with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once you get that part sewn, I'm just going to put tiny little cuts right here. I do not want to cut my seam, my sewn line, but I am going to cut right up next to it so that this circle will lay flatter. The curve lays flatter if you can spread it out by cutting these little slits. And now it's time to turn it right side out through that opening at the straight line or at the straight edge. I'm going to use this little stick to push all of my fabric out. And I'm going to take this over by my ironing board and just iron it flat. I'm going to fold this in half just to find the center of the strap. And now I can use that line to figure out where I want to put the snap itself. So I like to just use the cap portion, make sure that I like the way it looks, make sure it's on the line I just created. And I'm going to press down on the cap. It's going to make a mark in the center. You can actually push it sometimes all the way through, but I am going to use my awl to push a hole through the fabric. I'm going to put the cap on the top of my strap. I'm going to put the male portion here on the back of my strap. I've got my female die in my snap press. I'm going to put it in and press down on top. And now I've got my strap ready for the next step. So I have my interior piece of fabric. I am going to center up the piece of fusible fleece so that there's a little bit of, edge all the way around. And I'm going to grab it, I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to iron it from this side. This way I have much less risk of burning the fleece, and also it puts you a little closer to the adhesive, so you're heating up the adhesive so it melts onto the fabric. I'm going to get my exterior piece of fabric ready. So I have it so that the long sides, the 7.5 inch sides are over here at the right and the left, and I'm working along the shorter edge. I am going to measure from the right side inward 1 3/4 inches. And I'm going to mark that with my fabric marking pencil. And I'm going to do the same thing to the left side. So from the left side inward, I want to measure 1 3/4 inches. Now, on the right side where I have marked that 1 3/4 inches in, I am going to measure downward 1 inch. So I'm lining it up with that mark, and right at the one inch spot, I'm gonna mark that. That 1 inch mark is where I'm gonna place my snap. Right where I've marked it, I'm gonna take my awl and I'm gonna punch a hole through my fabric. And now I need to install the second side of my snap. For me, this is the female side. I'm going to put the cap through the back of the fabric. You can see the through, and I'm going to put the female side of my snap on top. I've got the male die in my press, and I'm just going to put it in and press down. Now the female side is installed. I'm going to test it with my strap just to make sure that they go together. Yep, working great. Now on the left side of my fabric, where I have my mark that is 1 3/4 inches in, I am going to center up my piece of elastic, and I'm going to line my edge up here, the edge of my elastic up with the edge of my fabric. And I'm also going to add my strap. So the edge of the strap, you do want the male portion facing up, facing toward you. And I'm going to line up the edge of that at that mark. About the center of my strap is that mark where I made on my fabric. I'm going to clip these in place. So I've clipped that in place. I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm just going to baste right here. I want to attach my elastic, my strap, and my fabric together with just like a less than 1/8 inch seam, just to hold this all together for the next step. Now I have my exterior ready to go, and I'm going to attach these two pieces. So I'm going to take my interior piece. This is the piece with the fleece on the back of it. And I want to line up the short edges of this with the short edges of my exterior fabric. I want the right side facing up toward me on the interior, and the right side facing down on my exterior. And I'm going to line up my edges and clip this in place. Now I'm going to take this to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew across just this one edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. With that done, you're going to have a piece that looks like this. This is not attached. That's the way you want it to be. And I'm going to flip it over, and I want to iron this seam toward my lining, toward my interior. the fleece. Be careful of your snap. You definitely do not want to melt that. Now I'm going to flip it back over. I'm going to take my two long edges here and line them up. So I'm going to fold it in half lengthwise. I'm going to line up all my edges. I definitely want to make sure that this seam here is lining up exactly with the seam on the other side. And I'm going to clip this in place. I'm going to take this back to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew down just this one side with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So what you're left with is this kind of funky looking tube. And now what we want to do is iron the seams open. So on this seam you just made down the long side, we're going to open up the seam and just iron it flat. And once again, do not iron the snap because it will melt. Now what you need to do is flip it right side out. The easiest way to do this is to pull the exterior through the interior. You can go the other way, but because of the fleece, this one's bulkier, it's just a little bigger pain in the butt. So you just kind of roll, and push the exterior out. Pull the interior down, and then you have this. And this end is still not attached. That's the way it's supposed to be. Now what we need to do is put the interior inside the exterior. So this is my exterior. I'm gonna roll my interior inside the exterior. So I want the wrong sides of the interior to be up against the wrong side of the exterior. And you just pull it down so that they're about even with one another. And it helps to kind of hold the top a little bit here and then pull your exterior down because you want that to cover the interior at the bottom. The top is going to look like this. And now it's kind of lumpy. You just have to reach in, smooth out your seams, kind of shift things around so that it's all laying flat. Once you get it feeling pretty flat, I am going to press it again. Now what we have to do is close this bottom edge. So I am going to roll my exterior around my interior. There is going to be a raw edge on the very inside of the sunglass holder, but you can't see it because it's way down there at the bottom. You're never going to see it, never going to touch it. But I do need to roll this to the inside. And I want to do that all the way around the bottom so it helps to clip as you go. And you want your edges to line up, or maybe have the back edge be just a little bit shorter than the front edge because you don't want to see it from the front. The one other thing you need to include with this seam is the other half of your elastic. So you're going to pull that elastic down to the other edge, but don't tighten it because it will pull on this top edge. So you want it to lay so that it meets the bottom edge, but is not stretched. Don't stretch it. I have a little excess here, so I'm just going to trim that off because I don't need that much of it. And what I want to do is just fold it over this bottom edge so it's not stretched, but it is laying flat and even. Get it centered because this is the back. And once I fold it around the edge, I'm going to clip it in place. Now I can take this to the sewing machine and just sew across the bottom with a 1/8 inch seam that's going to close it and attach the bottom part of the elastic. The only thing I have left to do is top stitch around this opening. I do think it looks a little nicer. It finishes it off. Okay, to do that, you need to be working from the inside of this opening. So I'm going to pick a spot, not right at the back, but kind of off to the side. And I'm going to put it underneath my pressure foot like this. And I want to sew a 1/8 inch seam allowance all around the inside. So I'm going to put my pressure foot down and I'm going to sew this stretch that's kind of straightened out right here. And when I come to a section here, I can't go anymore. I'm going to just leave my pressure foot down and I'm just going to pick up my fabric and turn it. So I have a little more runway here, a little more straight section to sew. And when I run into the Problem of no runway again, I just pick it up and turn it. And you keep doing that until you meet up with the section you already sewed. Are you ready to use up a lot of scraps and sew a whole pile of these? That's exactly what I've been doing. Happy crafting!